have. Now, our final talk of the day is going to be a really interesting talk. We'd like to introduce Andrew from Basic, who is really, really interesting talk ahead of you in terms of blending brand purpose and commerce. Now, Andrew is the VP of Creative. Now, he began as a strategy lead for Basic and is now actually the VP of Creative, which just shows his kind of mindset and understanding and personal approach to demonstrating how much kind of, I suppose, lack of emotion the digital industry holds. And Andrew is looking to challenge that. Now, I'd like to hand over to Andrew, who will jump into his talk. And again, any questions, we'll pick those up at the end. Welcome to the stage, Andrew.
Awesome. Thank you, Jake. It's great to see you again. Hello, everybody. I'll just reintroduce myself. This is a great introduction. Yeah, I've Andrew Yanoscik, but I've been here at Basic for almost 10 years. And I think as Jake mentioned, sort of my background has largely been, every aspect of what we've done here as a brand, starting as a branding first agency, really focusing in on how can we lean into what a brand is about and bring it to life through some sort of a digital expression. And I thought today would be a great opportunity to do a little bit of reflection to one of those moments that I felt like that really came to life for us as a brand. And we had this opportunity, it was early or late 2018, early 2019. We had this opportunity to partner with Patagonia. And I think as a creative, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with the brand, but a brand that lives their laurels. They really live by the purpose of trying to change the world and save the environment through business. And they're doing so in an interesting space, which is fashion, right? So I think highly relevant to kind of what we're talking through here. They had reached out to us because they were trying to do a better job at that. At the end of the day, they wanted to do more with their business, specifically with what they were doing in e-commerce, to get more of their audience to buy into what they're all about. And I think one of the interesting things about the fashion industry at large is we often hear about brands and we will even buy their clothes and wear them before we know what they're all about. And I think this presented a unique opportunity to say, like, hey, we want to capture those people and say, there's something about us that you love. There's an essence about us that you love, and we want to invite you to participate in that. And so in doing that effort, they really wanted to partner with us because they knew Basic had a knack for brand-led commerce experiences. So we got to jump in with them and help them with everything from top to bottom, from information architecture to user experience, so on and so forth. Our engineering team helped build out sort of the front-end development and a testing platform and a digital design system. And really, we focused in on this being a mobile-first experience for them. But the most important thing, as I mentioned before, was like, how do we better blend that branded content and purpose into a commerce-focused platform? And I'll take this back to like a personal thing for me. When this project kicked off, I had just returned from a trip in Europe, seeing a good friend of mine getting married. And it was not long before that, that I had read Yanoscik's book, but it was this opportunity to work with this brand that did things like this. And when I say they live it, they live it. That here in the States, Patagonia, when there's something that politically doesn't jive with them, they will put their money where their mouth is, and they will act in direct defiance of the best interests of their business. No better example of that than one of their most famous ads to say, they said, don't buy this jacket. Not buy this jacket, because they're about conservation. And to me, that put us in a really interesting place, because we were trying to say, how do we help you build a commerce platform focused on that, but also, take the risk to say, we don't know, this isn't about making money for us. This is about changing lives and changing minds. And I had just recently read, as I mentioned before, Yanoscik's book, and it became incredibly apparent to me, that this was a person, highly recommend, easy read, but this was a person to me who was just living his passions and thought, I can change the world through business and do this in a completely different way. To tie it back to something, Max, you were saying earlier, like challenging the way things are done is incredibly important. I think that's what made Patagonia so special and so successful, is saying, we don't have to build a business the way that everyone has done it before. And so to kick things off, for us, like, what was really interesting about this, if anybody can remember pre-COVID times, we used to get together all the time. But they actually embedded themselves in our offices for a few weeks. I mean, literally 4 days a week, it was the Patagonia creative team coming down to work with, a handful of members of our team. And we truly just gelled and got together and really dove into things. And one of the interesting things that their brand creative director, the first thing he said to me was, the old man's looking at us and saying, I'm in my 80s, damn it. What are we doing? We need to make more happen. He didn't feel like they were doing enough. He didn't feel like they were moving the needle far enough. And he saw the commerce platform as a better opportunity to do it. And he said, this next version of the platform needs to do a better job at that. And that really stuck with me because it made me think about what our role was, what the brief sounded like it was, and what the brief typically is when you're building a commerce focused platform, to something that was more about what is our purpose and how do we communicate it on the platform? How do we share and show all of the deep, rich film content that we're putting out there? How do we invite people to learn about our other brands and offerings like Patagonia Action Works and Wornwear? How do we engage people to learn more about the environment, learn more about the sports that we care about? But really, at the end of the day, what is our message? And I put down in the bottom is own our product. Because through all of this, if we're going to change the world through business, we cannot sacrifice what the business needs to do. If the business fails, then our mission fails at the same time. And so we really focused in hard on, how do we make this balance, which is sort of a new mix to selling things. I think today, most people, they want best practices. They want to strip away the fluff to just say, how do we get people to click and convert? How do we optimize these things? And to be unafraid to challenge that was a really ambitious and fun place to kick things off at. And so for us, I want to talk a little bit about the work that the team put together and show you a little bit of how these things sort of manifested in the design system. But that idea and that brief was such an exciting time for us to say, yeah, we're going to think about best practices, but our job here is to balance those things. Our job here is to be purpose built and to help them build out a platform that can do so. And what we came together with was one of the things I'm most proud of, from the work that the team has put together here over the last few years, something that feels like the brand, like Patagonia.com, truly a mobile first experience, but also feels like you're exploring content from the brand, whether it's film, as I mentioned before, or reading an article. It's really hard to sort of tell the difference when you are exploring and shopping product and when you're learning about our mission on the environment. It's a very simple design system, but it really came together holistically in sort of what I would call like just a very powerful, but very Patagonia approach to things. Get rid of the fluff, let the content speak for itself, make sure that our message can reign through, and blend these things together so it feels truly seamless in what we want to show the world. And you can kind of see that, like as an example, I like to pull out what are traditionally like, some commerce focused moments. But really simply, we are unafraid to say, hey, I know you may be shopping for a jacket right now, or you're looking for a pair of, snow pants, but I would love to invite you to take some action, and not only action near you, but sign this position sign this petition or explore your local activism, and take you off the path of I'm shopping today to say, I would like to change your mind to say there may be a more bold action that we can count as conversion. It doesn't always have to be buying a piece of clothing from us. It takes a really brave business to say something like that, and a really brave business to run their business that way. But it's a really fun and exciting sort of new definition of a user experience to say conversion isn't just about buying. Conversion is about making a change in your life, making a change in your heart and the way that you think and buy clothes. And we did so, like I mentioned, there was a balance here, right? We cannot fail the brand in terms of saying this is a mechanism that we still have to operate this business, otherwise we cannot affect the world. And so we leaned into content. We leaned into simplicity. We leaned into things that felt like the essence of the brand everywhere we possibly could, to still deliver you a really compelling and simple sort of shopping experience. But we had these touts and these moments and these mechanisms to put inside of the platform that allowed us to tell that more compelling story about how we're changing the world. It was funny. I poked through the site. Today we built we launched the site, over a year ago. And it's great to see like the merchandising teams, the first primary hero tout that I would see on their jacket page, which is a huge revenue driver for them. They're still using that. That is holy ground, so to speak, for a merchandiser. But they're still using that to be an opportunity to say and speak their message to the world. Hey, this is built to perform and built to last and built to reduce our impact. And that could be an area where they're going to sell their most popular product, but instead they'd rather deliver you a message. And I just use that as an example of, like, to this day, they still speak and live that, through CEOs and through regime change, they still live that, that passion. And with that, of course, we worked with them through best practices and helping think through the user experience for express checkout and buy online and pick up in store. In a really simple sort of a design system. But I just like to bring it back to the fact that we were unafraid to say, in some instances, we will step away from best practice. In some instances, if it is in the benefit of the brand or in the benefit of purpose-oriented content, we will purposely turn our back on what we know might be in our best interest on the business side to make a bet, to tie into people and build a relationship with consumers in a different way. Across things. And the other part I would love to mention too is just our engineering team. Our engineering team worked and built this amazing relationship, a digital style guide for them that we actually use to not only hand over useful code or front-end code that their team could go to implement into their system, but we also use this as a testing platform with consumers, just to ensure that the system we were putting together, while simple, was still functional. It still got them the information that they needed, but it also to test and see, like, is it creating interest where we want it to create interest across the system. Fully responsive testing platform that they built on the side. It was really impressive. But I bring all that up to say, as much of the distraction, some would say, that we put into the consumer experience, into the content strategy, and how we told some of these stories from a commerce perspective, we were still able to lift conversion, right? At the end of the day, and this is the thing I'm most proud of, mobile conversion increased by 25%. This is a testament to me, to what does it mean today to build a fashion brand. Fashion is built on purpose. The things that we wear say something about us. And when you are designing and creating for, a fashion brand, to take it back to the piece today, it's about leaning into what that brand means and telling that story. And really quickly, I just want to touch on one more piece of this. I know as I'm getting low on time here, we still hadn't quite tackled, in my opinion, even up until this point, like what Yvonne had challenged us to do, which was invite more people to make a change. And the brand creative directors, introduced us, we had built a great relationship at this point and said, hey, look, we have this other thing that is about our CSR and our ambitions and how we make clothes. It's called the Footprint Chronicles, and it is lost. And we need you all to help us maybe rethink this story. One of our co-hosts actually out today, Emma Santangelo, she helped us work through the strategy on this. But we dove in and we really took a look at the landscape and how people were telling these stories and tried to put together a more compelling narrative to how we could get people to change their mind and invite them to take a different effort into things, and explored all sorts of different visual styles and approaches to this system to say, how do we make this feel like Patagonia? Oh my God, I'm gonna get off this page because it's flashing in my face. But how do we make this feel like Patagonia, but have its own identity within this system? And ultimately what we landed on was, essentially a microsite within their site that could talk about their social responsibility and where they do business and how they make clothes and why, while calling themselves out, while calling the industry out, and while making ambitious statements about where they are in their progress towards where they want to be. And so you could kind of see those things, we built, it's more of a narrative-based storytelling. But the most important thing that I want to touch on here is we use that content and we blended it with the product stories. And I like to bring up this point to show that it doesn't have to just be used as supplemental when you talk about the purpose behind your brand. Leaning into things like where and how you make clothes can be a net benefit to that product story, and always will be. And so this is the thing that I'm most proud of, is taking content that used to be separated off, and oftentimes people relegate to the footer or tuck somewhere else off on the site, and saying that needs to be an in route and an invite to our consumers to say, hey, when you're learning about our product, we're telling you about the materials, like learn about why we use them and where we make them. And if you're in this industry, we invite you to go make those things. We publish this to say, please make your clothes better, because we have an impact and we want to change the way that we make clothes together. And so, reflecting on this, and, I think a little bit of, Max, what you were mentioning before was really speaking to me, is just the idea of when thinking about what's next for fashion is to never lose what I think is always true about fashion. It is what I mentioned earlier, that it means more than many other products that we are often go out there and we buy. And so it's important to dig into what these brands are about from a purpose standpoint, because these brands stand for something, they represent something today. And I'm excited about what this digital future offers for brands like Patagonia. The idea of NFTs, the idea of being able to make things in a world that doesn't have physical waste. I have no doubt will resolve some of the other environmental problems that exist within NFTs, but it's an exciting time to say that is going to change the world for fashion, and it may present us with opportunities to lean into purpose-built content like Patagonia has. All right, Jake, do I still have time for questions? I think that's
right. Thank you, Andy. That's a really, really good talk. Thank you so much again. We've got time for a quick question, which I suppose is difficult to answer in a minute, but I'll challenge you with that. Some companies obviously have gone product first rather than brand first, based on the way they were set up or based on their original focus. Is there an opportunity for these companies to retrospectively develop their brand above product? And if that opportunity is available, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think people buy things based on some value system, right? If somebody's coming into a heavily commoditized area, there's a value in what they're buying that they are getting from that brand. And I think that so long as you are true to your consumer and your culture in what they value, your messages should resonate. And I think being honest today, you sort of have to. Even brands that are sort of operating in that space of like, hey, we're going to step in as a commoditized product first place, they're moving into a place where they have to sort of represent the value system of not only their internal culture, but also the culture that they're speaking to and connecting with. And so I think it's about just being bold and brave and making that statement, not being afraid of putting that message out there that might piss some people off. But I think it's better to be all things to very few people than everything to everything to everybody. So
it's a great ending statement. Really nice. Andrew, again, thank you so much for such a great talk. I think one of the interesting parts to take away from that is the fact that content, that used to be redundant to the user is now top and center for what consumers look for, which I think is just a huge shift in both consumer mindset and what brands need to do.